Hey everybody, it's almost November and even here in sunny SoCal, it's fall. I love this time of the year, but it's also cold and flu season. So today I'm excited to share with you a sequence of poses that can help to boost our immune system. So even if we happen to catch a cold or a flu, hopefully the symptoms will be much more mild. These poses work their magic when they're held for time. And to help us with that, we're going to use some props. I have a blanket, you can have more, a bolster, a block, a strap, and there will be a chair involved as well. So gather your props and let's get started with this immune building sequence. Our first pose is going to be Uttanasana, a standing forward bend. And today the emphasis on Uttanasana is to have the head supported. You can see I have a chair, I have a block as well. We're starting with the chair and then if possible, we'll progress our way a little bit lower. So let's go ahead and get started. Facing the chair with the feet about hip width apart. And obviously any chair will do. You don't have to have one of those yoga chairs. Take your hands on your hips, elbows back, and lift the chest. Inhaling, lifting the chest, and on an exhalation, bend at the hips, come forward, and just bring the hands onto the seat of the chair. Pause a moment with your arms straight, with the legs straight, and begin to open the back of the thighs. Center of the thighs, press back, and the kneecaps lift up. And just allow that opening to come, especially if it's the first pose of the day that you're doing. You may be feeling a little bit tight. There may be a tendency to want to bend the legs. So slowly work on pushing the thighs back, pressing into the heels, awakening the back of the legs, and be patient. Give yourself and your hamstrings a little time to find their way. And if it's coming along well, bring yourself down on to your forearms, elbows, and then slowly you can bring the head down, crossing the forearms. The head can rest onto the seat of the chair. If you want more instruction on this pose, I am including a link for full instruction for Uttanasana here. So go ahead and check that one out. As you stay here, letting the back of the thighs open, relax your upper body towards the head side. You can feel the back opening, lengthening. Keeping the lower abdominals lifted up helps to relieve the back. It can actually bring a lot of softening for those of us that experience that lower back pain. Lifting the lower abs gently up towards the spine can help. Breathing always helps. Slowing down the breath, connecting with the breath. Every once in a while, it's a good idea to take a peek at the legs, see that they're still straight, see that the kneecaps are lifted, see that the feet are pointing directly forward rather than turning out. I'm letting the head, the eyes especially, to relax. Maybe the eyes want to close. Relax the back of your neck. Just be here for a little bit. From there, if you can proceed further into the pose, you can bring your hands down. You can work your way down the front legs of the chair, pushing it away, and then bringing your block. And then from there, you can just take your feet a little wider apart. I like to start with my big toes on the mat and the other toes off. And then carefully, you don't want to Jam your head into the chair, releasing down and letting the head to come to rest on the block. Another option, if you felt like you could go further down but this is too low for you, is you could just stack one more block, maybe even a folded blanket on top of the block. Then your head can rest. It'll be lower than before and not so intensive for the hamstrings. You can keep the hands, as I'm showing, lining up to the feet, or you can hold on to your ankles, gently taking the fingers to the back of the ankles, letting the elbows release out to the side, so they're kind of widening apart from each other. And you can play a little bit with shifting the weight back towards your heels or forward towards your toes, and then settling on really where it feels best for your hips, back, shoulders. Here you want to let the back body from your lower back to the waist to the upper back to start to release and let go to gravity. Even the back of the neck can soften down and the head can take a little more weight onto it. Sometimes what happens as you stay a little while in the pose, it feels like quite literally your spine is becoming longer. And if it feels like that, even that one block is a little too high for you, you can bring your feet just a little closer to each other. So you never should feel like you have to stay stuck in one way of doing the pose. You can adjust just about any pose per your needs on a particular day. And of course, eventually you do want to settle into a pose and try to stay and release into it. And allow the pose to work its therapy into the body. When you're ready to come out, put your hands on the floor, fingertips to the floor. Straining the arms, lengthen your chest forward. Take your hands to your hips, elbows up. Now take a nice big inhalation to bring you up so you can come up with your chest. And stay for a moment, especially if you tend to get busy coming up out of forward bends. Just pause a second with the eyes directly forward. If you're enjoying this content and you find it useful, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. And please reach out to me in the comments below if there are some poses you'd like me to work on, or if you have any questions. I'd love to hear from you. Next is Adho Mukha Svanasana, or a downward facing dog. In this pose, we're also going to support the head, and I'll show you that with the props, with a bolster or blankets. But first, one without any props, just to open the arms and the legs and the shoulders. So starting on all fours, bringing the hands directly under the shoulders, knees lining up with the hips, turn the toes under, and then lift the knees up and thighs up and back to come to downward facing dog. So push the center of your thighs back, opening the back of the hamstrings,
kind of putting this together. These actions are very similar to what you did in Uttanasana. The heels don't have to come all the way down, but you want to reach them back. And as you press into the floor, your inner arms should lift, shoulders lifting up towards the waist, waist lifting up towards the hips. And lots of the work should be transferred to the thighs, to the femurs, so some of the weight can come off of the wrist. And then the head just hanging. Long arms, long legs, long spine. And then coming all the way down. I'm going to show you this with a bolster. But of course, if you don't have a bolster at home, you can take a couple of blankets. I have this folded to roughly mimic the shape of a bolster. You would take 2 of these and stack them up, maybe even 3, and I'll explain exactly how high you're gonna want your props. So you'll come to all fours again and spreading the fingers, same pose as before, but now we have a little something to support the head. So you'll notice that I'm not dropping my arms and legs, I'm not bending anything, I'm not closing the chest to take my head down. I'm keeping the exact same actions in my arms and legs. Knees lifted, thighs back, and simply relaxing the head down. So if I found myself in a position where I would have to bend my legs or it was just so uncomfortable for my head to go down, then all I would have to do is to just add a little and bring that support a little higher. And the reverse would be true. If it's too high up and you feel like the back of your neck, you can kind of see it's not right for my head, for my neck is getting a little bit crunched. So then you could remove and basically make your prop work just perfectly for your body. The head rests. There's a real opportunity to relax the eyes, the brain. And this position can help to give us the opportunity to stay a little bit longer in the pose. The head support does make it a little bit easier to stay. Of course, if you find your legs get really tired or your arms or your wrists need a break, just come down, bend your legs, take a few breaths, take a little rest, and then you can go right back up. Always know that you have the option to take breaks, and it's always better to do a good pose for a shorter time than a bad pose for a long time. And then we'll bend the legs and come down and take a little child's pose. You can use your bolster to rest your head, or you can get rid of it. And then you'll come up and we'll set up for the next pose. Next is setu Bandha sarvangasana, or bridge pose. Today we're taking bridge pose, also supported with a bolster, and we're gonna also use a yoga strap. Any belt will do probably. Bridge pose is one of those highly therapeutic poses,
in yoga, and there's so many different ways of doing it. This way with the bolster, because the support is soft, again, it allows us to be a little more comfortable and hold the pose for longer. It's a wonderful pose for helping immune system. If you feel like you're coming down with something, I really recommend going to this pose and staying as long as you can manage. To do the pose, you're going to take a bolster or a stack of blanket, again fold it into the shape of a bolster. You'll sit on top. I'm going to bring this a little more this way. And you'll have a loop in your belt that you're going to slide your legs through. You're just going to tighten it around the thighs towards the upper thighs, but not all the way to the hips. You want this tight enough that it'll keep your legs secure, but not so tight that it's going to cut off circulation. So then from here, you're going to arch and open the chest and then lie back. You can drop onto your elbows and then slide backwards until you feel that your shoulders on the floor. So right now you can see my shoulders are not touching the floor. And when I teach this pose in class, I often have to go around and ask people to slide further down until the shoulders really grounded onto the floor. The pose becomes much more comfortable to hold once your shoulders are down, and the neck feels definitely a lot better. So you can stay with your legs bent a little bit as you let the body kind of settle into the pose. It may feel a little bit intense in the lower back at first, so please keep your legs bent as long as you need to. And then most often the back will just kind of settle. And then one at a time, you can straighten the legs. They're being held by the strap. And it's important, at least in the beginning, to really lengthen the legs, lengthen the thighs towards the knees, inner thighs towards the calves, into the inner ankles, keeping the toes upright. So the legs are maintaining some activity. The outer hips are drawing in so that the tailbone feels like it's being gently lifted up away from the bolster rather than dropping into the bolster. So that way the lower back is actually much better taken care of when you're in setu, bandha, sarvangasana. The other important part of this pose is to keep opening the chest. So the ribs should spread, the chest should lengthen, and the back ribs already, they're being prompted by your bolster to move into the body and to come closer to the front of the chest, and you want to open the chest and allow for that. The more you lift the chest, actually, the better the pose can feel and the less strain on the low back. Let the shoulders soften down. Every once in a while, lifting the chest, draw your outer shoulders further under you, lengthen the arms. Most of the time, best to have the palms facing up towards the ceiling. So this corner of the armpit and the chest is lifted up. It's a great pose to practice, especially for achieving a better posture, because as you know, most of us are bending over our devices these days. So this really helps to bring that posture into alignment, to open the chest, to keep the back upright. As you stay here, make sure that you're not pushing the back of your head down into the floor. You should feel like the back of your neck gently lengthens towards your skull and the front of the throat is soft. There should be no grip in your throat. Relax the corners of your jaw. Relax your entire face, the facial features, the eyes, resting
Whether you keep them or closed, make sure you keep your focus soft. Allow that space between the brows to gently increase. Let your breathing become calm and quiet, and definitely breathing through the nostrils. Insist upon breathing through your nostrils, even if you are dealing with allergies and colds and it feels like the nose is a bit plugged up. Try and use your nostrils rather than your mouth to inhale and to exhale. It's just so much better for our overall health. Then, when you want to come out, bend the legs. Keep your head down. You want to lift your hips up and use your hands and just shove that stack of blankets or bolster away from you so the buttocks can drop back down. And you can just rest your knees against each other. This allows your lower back and sacral band to widen. And the back comes into a neutral position. And then when you feel like you're ready, you can remove the belt or just widen it. Roll onto your side. And gently sit back up.
So for our next pose, you can see that I've kept my bolster, but I've added one more blanket over the top of it. And again, it's just folded from this square shape, narrow, so it can be similar to the shape of the bolster. We're doing a really well supported back bend here. So I'm going to turn my bolster so it's going across the mat, and I'm going to sit right in front of it. And if you've done setu Bandha sarvangasana, the previous pose, then the back is ready to go a little deeper into a back bend. And we're going to keep our legs bent and just drop onto the elbows. And here, as I press into the elbows, I'm drawing my shoulder blades in. I'm drawing my back ribs in and opening my back. And then sliding back until my head is gently resting onto the floor. So if you're here and your head is hanging, you may want to either support your head, so you could put a blanket under your head, or you could always remove the top blanket. Okay? So customize the pose for your needs. This height works pretty well for me. The buttocks are lightly on the floor. Shoulders now, they don't have to go to the floor. They're just hanging, they're floating here, and I let them relax and drop to gravity. Keeping the chest puffed open, so to speak, slowly straightening the legs. If you feel that this is a strain on your back when you straighten the legs, you have the option of keeping your legs bent or straightening one leg at a time. So you start with the right leg bent. Just breathe into that. And then you switch. And you can continue, switching the legs, or eventually you may find it's no problem to straighten the legs. So as we bring the back ribs in, we keep the chest open. The more we can activate the middle back, the upper back, the less strain on the lower back. So The whole spine is involved in this action, not just the low back, not just the neck, the whole spine from top to bottom. And all the spinal muscles get toned here. The chest is open, which feels wonderful to bring that fresh air into the top of the lungs. There's a joyousness to doing back bends. They're just so refreshing. They're a little bit intense if you've never done them before or if you're new to them. But I promise you, with practice, you'll grow to really enjoy them. So just rest your head. Let your breathing become nice and deep. Let go of the tensions of your day. This is one of the back bends because it's so well supported. You can stay a really long time. And as I said before, these poses work their magic with time. So stay as long as you can. And when you want to come up, you can bring your elbows back on, or first lift your head and then put your elbows onto your props. Pull your back in with bent legs coming up and just sit up for a moment. Enjoy that lift that comes to the chest and that feeling of space that comes into the body. So we're going to finish with viparita karani, which is not traditionally an asana, it's a mudra. And to do viparita karani, you can see I've brought my mat to the wall and I've covered it up with a blanket just to make things a little more comfortable. And I have a bolster and an extra blanket. So when placing the bolster, I don't want it directly against the wall. I want it a little bit away from the wall. I like to measure with my hand, so it's not right against the wall. I can slide my hands between the wall and the bolster, and then placing a blanket on top. So when you go into the pose, your buttocks will drop down between the wall and your bolster. So knowing that, you may have to adjust, come up and down a couple of times so that you set the pose up for yourself just right. You may need to bring your props a little further away, a little closer. And also, if you're taller, you'll add extra blankets on top. And if you're not, then you just maybe take one bolster or a couple of blankets if you don't have a bolster. To do the pose, you're going to sit, or to do the mudra, you're going to sit with your hips very close to the wall, with the side of your body really close to the wall. Then turn and face the wall. Take your hands behind you and start to slide your legs up. Support yourself with the arms behind you. And then you can drop onto your elbows. And then slowly coming down. And you can see my hips and legs came away from the wall. So I hold onto my mat and slide myself closer to the wall. So I tell my students there's no real graceful way into this pose. You just do a little dance till you're in place. Takes a little bit of practice. You want to basically have your buttocks lightly against the wall, your thighs to the wall, and your legs up and down. I will show you one more way to get into the pose. So to come out, you just push the wall away, you slide down, roll to your side to come up, and to go into the pose. For those of you that are a little more adventurous, we can basically do a somersault. So your head goes to the floor and
You bend the arms. It's like you're trying to go into downward dog, and then you drop your shoulders on the blankets. You can pause right there. And then you take your legs towards the wall. And as the legs slide up, you let the body slide down. The advantage to coming into the pose from here is you don't have to adjust back and forth. For the most part, the legs and the buttocks end up in that final destination. But of course, it's a little more challenging. So whichever way you feel comfortable, then that's your way into the pose. From there, relax your shoulders. Your shoulders are totally grounded. Your head, your neck is supported. Your elbows are on the floor. And the legs, even though they're up, you're not overworking your legs. You might even allow a little mini bend in your knees. Let the back of your thighs drop to gravity. Best not to let the feet turn out because it's just better for your hips and your lower back to maintain that alignment. But you want to try and stay here with the minimum effort. If you get in the right position in the pose, everything's taken care of. You immediately feel calm and comfortable and just really supported. Viparita karani means inverted lake. The lake refers to this abdominal space here, which should feel like the surface of a calm lake. And the lake should not be dropping, falling towards the chest side or towards the pelvis. It really should feel like it's still and in place with minimum disturbance. No turbulence in this lake. Let the back of your thighs to descend. Let there be a little bit of that drop, that heaviness of the buttocks down. The lower back is in a little back bend here. And we're continuing with that opening of the top of the chest, with the broadening of the collarbones, softening of the throat, eyes can be open or closed, but definitely keep the focus really soft. Allow the corners of your jaws to feel relaxed. We all tend to have patterns of tension in the body, sometimes as the jaw, sometimes behind the eyes, sometimes that space between the shoulders and the neck. We all grip there. See if you notice where you tend to hold tension and breathe into that and relax into that and let go into the pose. Let the pose support you. Because there is an inversions here with the legs up, it certainly really helps to build immunity, and it helps with fatigue on tired days. This is a great pose to do at the end of the day. It helps to promote a good night's sleep. Just a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. If you feel tension in the back of your legs and the back of your thighs, you can also slide just a little further back and bend your legs. Let your knees rest towards the wall. And then you could possibly stay a little bit longer. Choose the leg position that serves you best at this moment. Keep the chest broad, keep the breath flowing and smooth, and try and surrender all the worries, all the tensions of the mind. And you can change the cross of the legs. Viparita karani can be held for at least 10 minutes. I've been known to fall asleep in the pose, in the mudra. Very, very deeply relaxing, rejuvenating for the entire system. Feels cooling and calming. And when it's time for you to come out, if your legs are crossed, uncross them. If they're straight, bend them. Put the feet against the wall. And just slide backwards, definitely. Don't sit up and lift your head. Keep the head down. And when your buttocks go down to the floor, then you can just cross your legs again and drop the knees and the thighs, shins over the bolster, and stay here for a little bit. It's important to keep your nervous system calm and not jar the system as we exit the pose. And then when you're ready, just uncross the legs, roll onto your side. Let your head be last, pushing up with the arms. And that was it for this immune system sequence. I hope you enjoyed it. Namaste.